Yes, I believe that we are here trying to help people discover the same things that Buddha was teaching, that Jesus was teaching, to move into a conscious, awakened state, if you will, well, in a body. You know, so many people...
I agree.
Yeah, so many people feel, when I die...
Well, there is no death.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest illusion of all. When I die, wait a minute. If life exists, which it does, we're all here talking to one another, then there is no death.
Right.
But there is alternate forms, transformations that we move through within eternity, that we can experience ourselves in all kinds of different forms. And this is where mankind has really missed the boat, and I think it's Christians especially, who feel as though they were born, they live, they die. That's one of the biggest obstacles that they're going to be dealing with, is thinking in terms of a death.
Yes.
Because death cannot exist within the fabric of life.
Everybody seems to believe in it, though.
Well, they believe in it because of the physical, the eyes, the body. They watch the body. They watch a baby be born, right? The baby's born. They watch it grow older. Then they watch it get a little sickly, and then they watch it pass. What happens is we have lost the identity of the spirit because we have too much attachment to form.
Because of too many people misinterpreting what's in the Bible.
Well, I think they misinterpret what's in the Bible because we have too much attachment to form. If we really look at the Bible, and understood the Bible, Jesus said, no man goes up to heaven, but he who has come down from heaven, including myself, and I'm in heaven. Okay, he was talking about the spirit and the multidimensional aspect of spirit. So if we looked at ourselves as spirit, and this is the biggest problem that we all have. Who are you? Well, we look in the mirror. Oh, let me see, I have a beard, lost a little hair, lost a lot of hair. But no, we see the physical, the body, and that's who we identify.
But it's not real.
That's not real. That's not who I am. I am not the body.
But when the spirit integrates into the child, then the child starts to go, and it starts to become aware of, and most people, unless they've gone through extreme violence or abuse, don't realize that there is a spirit and a body. Well, they usually integrate and become one.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. We see the spirit and the body as one, rather than I am a spirit within the body. Now, back to the Bible, if we go back to Genesis, that was a perfect explanation of what mankind is about. It says God took the clay from the ground, made the flesh, made the body, and blew the breath of life into the body. So the body was empty shell, which it is. It's an empty shell when that breath of life that's injected in comes out. See, this is what we forget. Yep. The spirit goes in, the spirit comes out. I read somewhere years ago, they did a scientific study, and they actually weighed a body, and at the moment of death, there was a difference. It was very minute, but there was a difference in the weight of the body, because the spirit left the body.
I have to tell you at this point, science has found there is a third strand of DNA that is not animal-based. It is not of the nuclear DNA. It is a bacterial DNA, and without it, we cannot breathe or move. It is the responsibility of that third strand, which is found and transformed through the female egg, that is responsible for breath in our body and the ability for it to move. It was written by Dr. Lowell Thomas, this book, in 1974. And science has denied us the right to hear of this, because then there is a separation of the nuclear DNA, and it is this third strand of DNA. It's responsible for the ATP, which is the oxygenation, and it's in every cell, and without it, the body cannot move. And there's more of this than there is of the nuclear DNA, which is linear, by the way. six-sided but linear. It's a crystal formation. The mitochondrial DNA is round, and it is a positive spin. It's from the female, and as a result, and it's self-replicating. So those aspects, which is the eternal concept of what we are, that science somehow doesn't want to bring it to our consciousness in terms, lest religion get involved.
Well, I think one of the major obstacles, again, that this world is dealing with is the fact that there is a tremendous desire to control, to control others.
Yeah.
And as long as that is part of the human psyche, the real truth is going to be very difficult for people to acquire. Because, well, it's almost like the UFOs. Are UFOs real? Well, I don't want to get off onto that spin, but personally, yes, I've seen spacecrafts many years ago, almost 35 years ago. I saw things in the sky that I know were positively not of this world. But when we look in terms of God being a formless spirit that is expressing itself in terms of physical, first as energy and then the energy manifesting as matter, whether the matter takes on a human form or an alien form, what's the difference? It still is form. It's spirit moving into energy, moving into physical manifestation. So, that's irrelevant. But what happens is we are so close-minded in this world that we, society, and the powers that be, have conditioned people to be so narrow in their vision that if you talk about an alien, lock this one up, lock that one up. But all the while, the desire to keep people right under that thumb and to keep them closed so that they don't find out who and what they truly are. Because if you realized, I am a perfect spirit.
Yep.
I am one with God. We are all one with God. We are all perfect spiritual beings. Now all of a sudden, it's very difficult for someone to control you. It's very difficult for them to scare you and to put
manipulation.
Put the fear of God into you. How can you have the fear of God when you recognize that God is unconditionally loving and God is spirit and you're one with that? It's kind of hard for people to scare you now.
That's right.
So now without the fear, they can't control. So fear is something that must be maintained in order for the control to keep going.
Yep.
Now, what's the better way to keep people afraid? The unknown. Keep it unknown. Keep the truth from them.
Exactly.
Spend some bullshit they might buy.
Yeah, create a dogma.
Yeah,
Create a dogma that they can live by and they can adopt as their truth.
And make it in front of everybody else, because then all the neighbors will know you're not living up to the dogma.
Yeah,
So there'll be some judgments going on.
So yes, that's the long and short of it, and this is what we're faced with in this world. It's kind of it's a tough thing for most people to overcome, because the majority of the world are living in fear, and the world is actually, because they're living in fear and because it's energy and we are interconnected to that energy, we have been feeding this fear. It's almost like the Freddy Krueger movies. The more you buy into something, the stronger it gets. And because the majority of the world feel fear is something that is real, they've fed it. And it's big. It's very big. Spirit is a little more powerful. God, unconditional love, is a little bit stronger. The Bible talks about love being all there really is.
Mm-hmm.
And it also says there is no fear in love.
That's right.
So the moment we embrace love, we overshadow the fear. You bring the light to the darkness. And it can't get much simpler than that.
Simple acceptance.
You don't say.
It is that simple. Well, what we were going to do tonight And let's just do this, because I was going to do this last week. I didn't do this because at some point I want to throw some of this up on the internet. And I was going to start reading this book, and we're going to go in here and then discuss these things as we go. I wanted to find out what people know, what they don't know, and how things are being received. So I'm gonna skip the introduction, and I'm going to move right into. Well, actually, it is the introduction I'm going to jump into right now. An important note to the reader, and this is very, very important. Much of what follows may at times seem contradictory. Some of it may coincide with traditional interpretations, while other material might prove difficult to understand. This is because, unlike other books, this book is the result is not the result of an extensive research and study. It is the product of a direct revelation from God. God has told me that my purpose in this world is to explain and clarify the message of Christ, hence this book. The words that follow, now this is going to be hard for some people to grab and accept. The words that follow are not my words or my interpretation, but rather the interpretations of He who sent me. And I'm going to stop there for just a second and explain what I mean by that, because I still have a memory of how my mind used to think and how people may relate to that statement. The experience that I had, there was not a real verbal communication that went on. It was more of a infusion of knowledge, of a merger. I know in that moment, as spirit, as God is the summation of all that is, in that moment, don't ask me what triggered it, because I can't duplicate it in this moment. I suppose it would be possible, but I haven't been able to duplicate it since. All of creation was simultaneously available, all of the various dimensions of time and space.
I'm very well, thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing great.
An understanding of how it all works.
Great.
What we are as spirit, how we are one with God, which is this unconditional love. It was right there. And I was left with an understanding rather than saying, okay, Bruce, here's your job. You're going to do da-da-da, go do this, go do that. I didn't have all the details of how it was to be presented. I was just shown, here's how it works. And I had an understanding that that was my job. So it wasn't like I have a conversation with other people the way we normally communicate. One says this, we listen, we say that, we ask questions back and forth. There was no real question-answer thing. It was, boom, instantaneous understanding. And that's how it came about. And I thought that was kind of an important point, so I wanted to address that just a little bit. And I thought in this next sentence I did address it a little bit. Unlike many of the prophets in the past that you might be familiar with, men who received their divine calling via intermediaries such as angels, visions, etc. I am the beneficiary of a communication with the Creator Himself. What I know is what He told me direct. And again, when I say told, it was more of a presentation in an instant, not directions, not verbiage. And so, what I was left with in that moment, when I now picked up the Bible and I started reading, and I read about Moses, and I read about other prophets, and I read about things. So if someone handed me the Bhagavad Gita and I looked in there, instantly I could feel the proximity to ultimate truth as opposed to levels of truth. Because everything that exists is a part of God. There is nothing that can possibly be that is not out there that didn't begin with or come from God at some level. But what I saw was God is expressing itself through all the various dimensions, through all of time and space, and every aspect is God. It's not just this, or that, or that, or that, or this, or the Christian, or the Muslim, or the Hindu, or the atheist, but all of them. You can't exclude. You can't say, well, everything's a part of God except for this little crumb over here. This little crumb doesn't belong. No, it is. It all belongs. This is one of the biggest obstacles that we're facing in the world, is we have adopted beliefs that are limited. I don't care what limitation you have embraced. If it's limited, it's an incomplete picture. And this is the biggest problem that the world is going to deal with. Because if you really want to know truth, and I've used this example many, many times, if I throw a jigsaw puzzle, throw all the pieces on the floor, and everybody picks up some pieces, you're going to have a piece of the picture. You're not going to have the complete picture. Not until you can take all the pieces and look at the pieces in its completed form. Now, can we do that? Can we experience that? I say, I had it.
You did.
I did it. I did it, so I know it can be done. Not only can it be done, but as spirit,
It is.
it is. As spirit, God exists in all of the dimensions of time and space now. And because we are one with that, if we could let go of our thoughts, our beliefs, our limitations that we hold, we can then open the doors to the experiences. The only thing that stands in the way of us experiencing more of our true essence is our thoughts. Thoughts and beliefs. Erroneous thoughts and beliefs is the only thing that can stop that. No one and nothing in creation was created better or more than the next. Now that's very hard for us, especially those of us who are born into the Christian traditions that Jesus is the only begotten Son. Oh, he was special. He wasn't
I say
special.
Jesus was my brother, because I'm a child of God.
Yeah. Jesus is your brother. She's my brother. She's everyone's brother. And anyone who doesn't accept Jesus as their brother isn't seeing the big picture. Everyone who doesn't accept the atheist as their brother is not seeing the big picture. Because in the ultimate reality, not one is different or better or worse than the next. The only thing that stands in the way of us knowing that and experiencing that is our thoughts, our beliefs, our minds. So that's where we have to change the mind. But before we get too deep into all of that, because later in the book we will get there, I didn't want to get off track here. This next paragraph kind of addresses what I was just talking about. Although I recognize that the Father and I are one, I am not the Father, the Creator, but His messenger. What comes to mind is what Jesus said when He was here. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. He also said, of my own self I can do nothing. Because God is everything that exists, including all of you, including me. But I am not the originator. I had this partner at one time who kind of believed that he was the creator. I mean, he kind of thought he was. And I used to say to him, well, if you're the creator, what does that make me? Who am I? What am I? I mean, we all have the ability to influence moments within creation. As a matter of fact, it's our job. Our job is to move through creation and move into a state of unconditional love. And we do that through experience. And I remember saying in the past that we are constantly experiencing a lesson or love.
If you don't get it right the first time, you're gonna have lots of lessons.
You're gonna have them over and over and over and over again, like a record, those old records that used to get stuck on it, and the needle would just be in that one track, and it would go over and over, like Groundhog Day. Remember Groundhog Day? He just woke up and he kept seeing the same day over and over and over and over again. Mankind is kind of doing that. We're stuck in a groove, and we keep it alive. We keep going and going and going and going, and we're stuck. And our little intellectual thinking minds can't grasp something more than what we're seeing right here, right now. So we keep it alive. We keep this going. Later we're going to talk about transforming the mind and moving into a whole different set of experiences, because we can go from linear time into being. Being is the now. Recently someone was talking about a book, The Power of Now. I think,
Greg Braden, was it?
I'm sorry?
Greg Braden?
Was it Greg Braden, or no, I think it was, the one who was on Channel 2 a lot.
Wayne Dyer.
Wayne Dyer, I believe it's Wayne Dyer's book, isn't it, The Power of Now?
I think so.
Yeah. Or was his name Power of Intention?
Power of Intention.
Power of Intention. Maybe it was Greg Braden talked about now. I'm not sure which one. But anyway, the power of now, in the moment of now, the past, the present, the future are available to us. The Course in Miracles talks about when you change your mind about something. In other words, when you stop judging it, when you start to open your heart to seeing the real truth, when you start looking through loving eyes, all of creation will be transformed and accommodate your decision. So even the past, now this is very, very hard for us to grasp, and I don't want to go too far into it at this moment, but even the past is affected by this moment when you alter your thinking. Because it is all interconnected, the past, the present, the future. So as spiritual beings, when we alter our thought and we move from fear to love, even our past is I'm going to say erased. In a way it is erased. All of that is transformed to accommodate the change that we have brought about by changing our minds. And that being said, I'm going to jump back here. I don't want to get too deep into that right now. I'm going to share with you not only the real meaning behind Scripture, but also an overview of the mechanics of creation. Kind of what we're talking about right here, just a little bit. This book will not only give you the roadmap to salvation, but it will provide you with the insight into God's consciousness. And then from Luke 24:45, he opened their minds to understand Scriptures. That's what we're going to do. That's what this book is about. This is about understanding Scripture. It's understanding love. It's understanding fear. It's understanding spirit. It's understanding linear time. It's understanding what it means to be. That's what we're going to get out of here. Understanding the Scriptures can be difficult. Not only must you often look from an entirely different perspective, but you must also reconsider the meaning of certain words. Old or entrenched meanings and interpretations can frequently get in the way of understanding. And this is true. Oh, wait a minute. Why would that be true? Anyone have an idea why that would be true? Why are our old thoughts going to get in the way of our experiencing and understanding truth today?
Because you bring those thoughts into your actions today. Anything you do is based on part of that old thought.
Based on part of that old thought. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's where the phrase history repeats itself comes from.
How about, if we're going to move into the now, power of now, and I bring an old thought in, I'm bringing the past into my now.
Right.
Which means this now is going to go into experiencing the future based on my past. Einstein, you remember Einstein said, you can't change a problem or correct a problem with the same mindset that creates the problem. If we don't allow ourselves to look at things from a different angle, and we continue to go on interpreting them with the same set of parameters that we've always used, we can't go anywhere. Because you're right, we're going to repeat. If we don't repeat exactly, we're going to repeat another lesson with all of this as being the instrument that orchestrated that lesson. Because here we are, always in the now. That now is putting out an energy. And that energy is going to come back and bring us an experience. Has to. And the frequency that we put it out, this is what Christ was referring to when he was trying to help people understand how powerful we are as creators and how powerful our thoughts are when he said, judge not, lest ye be judged, and you judge with the exact measure you use. Because the exact vibration you put out there, you're putting it out in there, and it's going to come back, and it has to come back to you. It has to. It's the laws of creation. Energy just interrelates with energy. And thought is a very, very powerful energy. You can't escape your own thoughts. Nobody can do that. We can, however, let me just go a little deeper here because it's very important. We can go from linear, where we're sending that energy off. We can go from there, but the moment we move ourselves to an unconditionally loving state, which is spirit, we move into a now, and in that now, we experience something that the Bible refers to as grace. There's grace. Grace means you just washed away all of that energy. You just washed it away. And it can be done. And later we're going to talk about how Jesus asked people to become perfect. Only time you can be perfect is when you are moving in an unconditionally loving state. That's perfection. Perfection is when you see nothing but love in front of you, when you see nothing but God in front of you, when all form of judgment, including judgment of self, which is a little bit difficult for some of us to move away from, when you let that go, you will experience love. You'll experience perfection, spirit within God. Many of the words in this book can only be understood from a new perspective. The word seen through spiritual eyes has a different meaning from seen through human eyes. And again, we've kind of touched on that. The difference between judging things would be human, experiencing things would be spirit. Two states. To help the reader, I've used capital letters, uppercase to denote spiritual concepts, and lowercase for those describing the human or worldly ones. For example, creator with a capital C. When referring to God, use the capital C, and when referring to man as a creator, it's used a lowercase. The word God might be used as opposed to the big G, God. There are many gods, but there is only one God or creator force. We all, the Bible talks about, we are gods. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. From spirit, God alone exists. And because God alone exists, as a formless energy, Now, this is where we have to use our imaginations just a little bit. But I like what Einstein said. Einstein said, imagination is greater than knowledge. Because using imagination, you actually can experience the now. You can experience your true essence. You can open all of the dimensions of time and space that are available to you if you allow your imagination to just open. As I said a little bit ago, the only thing that stands in the way as a barrier between any of us and the dimensions of time and space is our beliefs, our thoughts, our belief systems. So if you use your imagination like a child, this is why Jesus said this. If you really want to know, if you want to really truly experience the kingdom, you must become the child again. Because as a child, the child doesn't know what to believe and not to believe. He has to be taught. We do a pretty good job at conditioning our children to put the veil upon their eyes and to see things as good humans. We teach them to be judging from the time they're born. Because we were taught to do that, and we think that's what a good parent would do. Unfortunately, what a good parent would do is stifling the spirit within. And if you really want to help the child, you should really be focusing on the spirit and not the body or the human. And if some of that was to go on in this world, we would be seeing some tremendous changes in this planet. But anyway, let's get back to the other, about becoming the child again. If you become the child will just look in wonderment at everything. And if you look in wonderment, I remember as a child spending hours in the woods. I used to play in the woods a lot when I was a kid. And, you're just lost in time. Time doesn't mean anything. And all of a sudden, minutes go by, hours go by, might be supper time. Get home late. Where you been? I don't know. Time was gone. Time was irrelevant. When you get so into that moment, you might be. I remember just watching ants one time, for example. Just watching these little ants, and you're so into that moment that right in that moment, all of the problems of the world, all of the judgments, none of that stuff is real to you. It has no meaning. When we can become that pure of mind, now you are understanding why Christ said, you must become the child again. You must move to a state where you don't give a value to every single moment relative to good and bad. In a little bit, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in terms of...
Is that what people do?
Which people?
People in general. Give a judgment value to every moment?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
From your
Because we didn't
teachings and
know
from
any
your
better.
conditioning.
Yeah. Being a parent of a teenager, oh man, I still wanted to walk him across the street. He couldn't do shit without me. Because I was the caregiver and I needed him to be the perfect student and the perfect child, and it's all been about his body and his mind and not his soul. I nurtured the hell out of his body and his mind, but didn't even get close to the soul. So, yeah.
That's a natural thing for a parent, though.
But
How many
there
of us don't have expectations for our children when our children are born?
Oh man, I certainly am trying to get over
I
that.
didn't have any.
Well, you didn't have any. Well, that was
I
great.
did.
I mean, I was thankful that they had
conditioned to.
5 fingers and 5 toes, and they were all right. They were
Yeah, they'll get by, right?
hi. You mean like go to college and do this and do that?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
find the
Oh,
grades. and
No, I was more
everything.
interested in what they wanted to do. I gave them all the basics, what had to be done, and I knew I didn't have control over these guys. But then I remembered I was a spirit and a body. I never integrated.
Yeah.
So I never saw them as children,
Uh-huh.
as extensions of me. I saw them as spirit with a body. And I always dealt with them as if they were spirit rather than
Geez, lucky you, you had lots more information.
lucky. Oh man.
Huh?
These are unique kids. These were unique spirits. They were different than me. They taught me. Oh my God, they taught me so much.
Because you wanted the spirit over the personality.
Yeah. They were amazing.
Gibran said in his book, our children are not our children. They come through us, but not from us.
Amen.
And I think that one of the biggest problems that people have is they don't understand that. What you just said. Excuse me. They are not our children.
Yeah, I knew they didn't
Jesus.
belong to me. It was like they're gods all the way down, and they taught me about life.
Yeah.
They would come around and I would hear my voice in them when they would, you know, they're 3 and 4, and I'm going, gee, I got to change me. They're imitating everything in the way I do it. So they became my mirrors of what I was doing when I was doing that was inappropriate, because they were giving it back to me. I'm going, I don't like that. There's something wrong with me. I got to change that. So they kept training me how to become a better person, different ways in order to the art of communication, because what you think, and what, you know, rather than, because
Yeah, that was me, Mother Thumb, Melina.
it was interesting.
Most of the world, I would say, has been conditioned to believe that our job as parents is to control our children and to mold our children, make them into something, as opposed to interacting with that spirit. You know, I don't care. You do what I tell you to do, and that's the end of it. Smack. Sometimes, yeah. Well, Johnny does. How come they don't? I don't care what they do over there. This is what you do here. You know, and so we're very, very rigid in many ways of how we handle our children, and we've been conditioned to believe that's a good parent. You know, if you want to have a good child, be a good parent.
See, I never had any, how can I say, I was raised with a knowing that if I did what they wanted me to do, I was loved. But I knew that wasn't love. I knew that wasn't love.
Yeah, right.
Love to me was no matter, I used to tell my children, I said, well, no matter what you do, I love you. Your experiences are your experiences, but you can tell me, because, you know, whatever you go through is fine. It's important that you experience. But it wasn't, I loved you no matter what. And they still know that. I mean, I don't care how old they get. It's like communication was open because it wasn't based on their action. It was based on what they are. And that's strange, I found.
I try to do the same thing with my son, and he's told me some things. You know, over the years, I said, "Wow, some of the things that most people wouldn't accept or expect their child to come and share with them." You know, but I've always tried to do the exact same thing. Leave that door open. I don't care what you do. I mean, let me say, I would like for you to understand cause and effect in this world and understand the laws and so on and so on, and I'll explain these things to him. But then I really have no expectations whether he becomes a street sweeper or whether he was a brain surgeon. I know that he came here to experience, as I have, as we all have, to experience and to grow spiritually. And my job was to help him understand that and to share with him. And you're right, communication. Most parents and children don't have a door of communication open because there's too much control trying to take place. And
I have it, you don't. Sit down, shut up.
yeah, sit down and shut up. Well, you know, there's really not going to be a lot of communication going on there. You know, it's not like, oh, I want to share this with you now. Because, well, if I share this, that's going to happen. If I share this, that happens. So now what happens is they start to pull away and away and away and away.
That's why I never had a generation gap. There was never a generation gap with my kids, and there was never a generation gap with myself and my parents, because I understood they were controlled people, and I just didn't, it didn't bother me. It was like, that's your problem, not mine. I knew that about them when I was little. It was just, And I thought, that's fine. You are who you are, but I know what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I
I'm
never
not
rebelled. There was nothing to rebel against. They never told me what to do, what not to do, because I already knew what I was supposed to do. That was something inside me that just, I knew what I had to do. It was really weird.
If we listen, we all have that. Be still and know that I'm God. In that quietness, there is always a communication going on. It's only when we go into our intellectual thinking mind. And this is what creates the static. You know, as long as we're in the thinking mode, we're not in the hearing mode. Well, I've heard many people tell me, well, I'm going to go meditate. And they go and they close their eyes and sit back and I got it. And here's what I got in my meditation. Well, what they got was a rehashing of all of the garbage that's inside, and they came up with what they wanted to hear. Here's what I got in my meditation. This must be true. Well, many times it's not true communication going on here. True communication only takes place when we have learned to quiet that mind to the point where my thoughts are out of the way. And that's not an easy place. That takes practice. It does. I'll be the first to admit. It takes a lot of practice because we've practiced at being human, 1. 2, we have been taught to be human, thinking animals. Our parents taught us very, very well. Their parents before them. Society. Look outside. We are not much different than a very conditioned dog. You drive down the street, the light's red, start, you know, it turns green, we go. And so we do. We know how to move in our world.
And when we meet people, we wag our tail. Hello, how are you?
Yeah.
You know, it's all part of the...
All part of the game.
Yeah, well,
Very superficial most of the
human
time.
and the spirit during the meditation want to fight. It's kind of strange. You said it was kind of strange. Ever go to meditate and can't catch a breath and shake all over? Tends to make one not want to meditate. And so you come and talk to Bruce and he's like, well, it's 2 separate entities. It's 2 separate entities. I could not get my mind into meditation. I was, because my human wants to be in control. That's just the way it is. And I hang on to form, oh my God. Even though I know if I didn't, I'd not experience the fear. I don't know how to let it go.
You do now.
I'm working on it. No, because I come here and I got it all figured out, and then I leave here and I can't stay focused. It's that staying focused.
It's been said, the Course in Miracles says this, that there's only love and fear, that's all exists. There's no other emotion. There's love or fear. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Awake and asleep. Awake and asleep. God is love. We're part of that. If we're not experiencing it, like somebody said to me the other day, not too long ago, just the other day, somebody said,
Are the awake and the asleep on the right sides?
No, he's going backwards.
see, you're right on the ball.
Seeing if I was paying attention.
See, if you're paying attention, actually, you're right. Asleep
'Cause I was-
and awake, there you go. Well, the human would say it was the opposite. But anyway, no, just the other day, somebody said to me, geez, I wish God would speak to me. I wish I could hear God speak to me. Now, after the experience that I had, I understand that God is screaming at this world. Screaming to every single person. And I remember somebody one time, 10 years ago, somebody came up to me and said, why did God choose you? How come he spoke to you and not to me? I thought about it for a second, and I thought, you know, the real question is, why don't you hear God speaking to you? I'm not special. We're all spirit.
You were just in tune, more in tune.
I was in tune in that moment. I'm in tune when I choose to see everyone as a child of God. Every single person. Black, white, yellow, green. You know, talk about the extraterrestrials here. Whatever color somebody is, doesn't matter. All children of God. Everyone. If we started looking at everything that way, if we started looking at God as the summation of all that exists, then we could start to see, wait a minute, God isn't speaking to this one, this one, this one, or that one. God's speaking to everyone. But it's just like the radio that we can't hear playing right now. I mean, it's the radio waves, they seem to be invisible. I don't see them. But if I tune in the radio,
Pick it up.
I can pick up and it will come broadcast through. God's voice is exactly the same way. Tune God in. We actually tune God out. It's not like God doesn't wake up and one day say, okay, I'm going to reach out and touch the world today. No. Since the beginning of time, God has been calling this world to listen,
And
to
all
love.
we've been getting is someone's opinion in the church.
Someone else has given you something to create static.
To keep you coming back for more.
And if you're listening to the static, you'll never hear the love.
But you get smacked around when you don't listen to the static. You know, by grandma or mom sitting next to you.
Judgment is what creates static.
Yeah. You go to church to learn about
Judgment. You're gonna hear good and bad. We've all heard of good and bad, and we've heard that there are degrees. There's degrees of good, there's degrees of bad, and all of these people who think, I've been good, I'm gonna go to heaven. Good for you. I don't think so. They're not gonna go to the heaven that they think they're gonna go to if they believe they're gonna go to heaven because they say, I've been good. Because God, when I say love up here, this is the agape, unconditional love. That's God, unconditional. That means the good and the bad cannot be seen. That explains why, as human beings, we look at a situation. How could a loving God allow whatever it is?
So he gave us free will. And we made choices that led up to that consequence.
We create the things in this world for us to experience relative to choices, yes. Including, and here's where people would really have a problem, including what we call natural disasters. The world's being shaken. Why? We're
Nobody's
calling
paying
for it.
attention.
We're calling for it as a global society. As a global society of humans, we are creating the necessity for the energies to shift and slap us in the face. That's what's happening. God's not punishing people.
People just living where the water's supposed to be.
No, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper as we move along here. We're going to talk about the various dimensions of time and space and the linear journey of the evolution of spirit. Then we'll talk about the now. We're going to talk about the contrasting way that we can experience awake or asleep. We'll get into that a little bit more as we get deeper into the book. But as an introduction, I think it's vitally important that we just recognize that any thought that we have that is limiting in any way is going to be an obstacle to knowing God? Any thought? God's limitless. So that's where our imagination is going to have to come into play when we read this book. Or any book, doesn't matter what you read. You want to know God, you have to recognize that God is limitless. God cannot be defined in terms of form. It's not long beard,
He don't look like a hippie?
doesn't look like a hippie. He's not the female goddess that so many now are embracing as, oh, the goddess. No. God is formless energy that is expressing itself in every dimension of time and space and all form. So if you want to know God, you've got to take all the pieces together. If you don't take all the pieces, you've missed something. And I think next week, I think we're going to jump into interpreting the Bible just a little bit. Talk a little bit about that and why so many have misinterpreted the Bible and why so many are embracing the wrong concepts that are keeping the illusion alive and not bringing people to a state of understanding. Judgment is the key. That's the thing to always focus on. If you want to know whether you are, as Einstein said, and I like the way he said that, I want to know how God thinks. The rest of the details. How does God think? Does God judge? See, this is the beauty. The beauty is that God, being the summation of all, God doesn't have to judge anything.
He gave us free will. He's just watching it unfold.
He's watching us kind of like grow or flounder or do whatever we're doing. Whatever we're doing in any moment, we are making a choice. And every choice has a consequence. Doesn't have a punishment. And this is no, coming from a Christian background, this is something that I have to emphasize. I was encouraged to believe in reward and punishment. It's the wrong way of seeing God. God does not reward and God does not punish. God provides opportunities for growth, opportunities to wake up. That's it. In this world of good and evil, in this dimension, in this illusion, there are certain things that we experience, and there is such a thing as karma that is part of the evolution within the dream. And I don't want to go too deep into that right now because it gets confusing when we start talking about two states of consciousness. And I think we're going to touch on the Garden of Eden and talk about the states of consciousness before we get a real feel for how we can have these two experiences of awake and asleep. But basically, what we have when we're talking awake and asleep, that's the sum difference between death and life. Death and life. Life is forever. Death is a temporary state that we experience as long as we want to have our human fear-based thoughts. And with that,
We're late and we gotta leave.
you're late, you gotta leave. All right.
But by
well.
golly, we made it for a little while.